Hey, welcome back to Business 163. We are now in this third video looking at the topic of credit cards. And so we have given you, of course, some additional supplemental information to also augment what we're going to say in this video, but this will give you a brief introduction to the topic of credit cards for our discussion. So, as you can see here, credit cards. What should we know? What do we need to know about credit cards? Some might say, well, the first thing you should know is don't use them. But really, that's not the case. I think we'll make the case that credit cards can be, if you can responsibly manage them, they can be a great thing. They can help you to build your credit. They can help to give you flexibility in your life. But they can be, well, abused, and they can have very negative consequences in our actual personal lives. So, what do we need to know to understand credit cards and credit card terms? Well, what is a credit card? A credit card is quite frankly, it's just a revolving line of credit. A bank issues the card and says, we trust you to borrow up to the credit limit, whatever that amount is, and that you will repay it to us, either in a lump sum at the end of the month or with some sort of minimal amount of payment that you'll keep paying on a monthly basis. We trust you enough to give you a card so that you can make purchases. You can use the card to make purchases at other places, stores that accept the card as a means of payment, as a revolving line of credit. Consumer or revolving line of credit means that you can use it and then pay it off and pay the line of credit down to zero. You can pay some of it off and carry part of the balance into the next month. Or you can continue to simply make very small payments and have this balance constantly owed. So, what are some terms you need to understand about a credit card? Well, a credit card, as a revolving line of credit, will have a limit to the amount of credit the bank will give you. That's stated both in the statement and in the agreement. And so you have a credit limit, the maximum amount of money you can borrow in that account at any point in time. By law, all credit cards will also state their APR, or annual percentage rate. This is the total overall cost of the card, which includes not only the interest you'll have to pay back, but also any other fees that are incorporated into the cost of having the account. Therefore, the APR is the best apples-to-apples way to compare one offer to another. If you have 3 or 4 different credit cards perhaps that you're considering, the APR is the one that will tell you the actual numeric cost of having that card. Best way to compare credit cards, the APR. Which is a little different than the next term, the interest rate, right? The interest rate is what? The amount of interest that's charged for balances carried unpaid to the next month. And there may be more than one interest rate associated with a credit card. Often, a card may charge a different rate for standard purchases you make in a store versus if you use the card to get a cash advance, or if you use the card to transfer a balance from another credit card onto that credit card. More on balance transfers in just a couple of bullet points. But you can see here, the interest rate can be different depending on the type of usage. And of course, the very first sentence says that's the interest rate that's charged if what? If you carry the balance unpaid into the next month. Which of course suggests whatever you charge on the credit card on the second of the month, if you pay it off before the end of the month, well, you don't incur any interest charges whatsoever. Now, of course, that doesn't mean necessarily that the card is free, because you may have a credit card that, next bullet point, has an annual fee. Some cards charge an annual fee just for, well, the luxury of having the account open. That's an annual fee you're forced to pay, even if you never use the card to charge anything on. And of course, you see there my hint, avoid these like the plague. Don't get those kinds of credit cards that have an annual fee. If you get a credit card offer in the mail and, well, quite frankly, you need a credit card for some reason, you're thinking of opening one, if you read down to the fine print and it shows that this card has an annual fee, take the paper, shred it, and throw it in the garbage. In addition, you occasionally may find some credit cards that have other fees incurred over and above an annual fee. You also want to avoid those too. Another term you'll want to understand about credit cards, the grace period. That's the amount of time you have to pay off your purchase balance in full without paying interest. For many cards, that's just simply the end of the statement period, the end of the month. However, there are some cards with special terms. If you, for instance, use it to make a particular type of purchase or a purchase of a particular window of time, you may have longer than 30 days to pay that entire purchase balance off in full without incurring any interest charges. Make sure you read those carefully, and if you do make a purchase with a grace period, make absolutely sure you pay it off within that grace period so that you don't end up incurring additional interest charges. Finally, the last term on this slide for you to understand is the balance transfer. Let's say that for a while now, you've been carrying a balance on one of your credit cards and they're charging you 13% interest. Every month, the outstanding balance, they add 13% interest calculated as a monthly sum, right, onto your monthly payment. And you find a credit card that only charges 6% on balance transfers. If you were to take the outstanding balance on card 1 and transfer it to card 2 as a balance transfer, you would be paying significantly less interest on that balance than if you'd kept it on the original card 1. That's a balance transfer. A transfer you initiate that moves all or part of the balance owed on one credit card to another credit card. And typically that's done to save interest incurred. All right. So that's generally how a credit card works. Just by understanding these credit card terms, you can understand how a credit card works. So, you know that I've already mentioned it normally is a good idea for, even as a student, as a college student, to get your first credit card and to manage it responsibly. Now, that could be anything from a department store card to a gas card to sometimes now, most of the major banks offer what we call first cards or student-focused offers from banks, credit unions, and similar. And so you can find that most of the major players in the credit card world are now offering first cards. They may have several different names, student card, first card, those kinds of things, right? And so once you apply and get your first card, typically it will have a relatively low credit limit, and some rather stringent terms to make sure that you learn the ropes up front, right? What's the best way how to use a credit card? Well, first of all, keep the card in a physically safe place in your home. Nowadays, you certainly do not want to keep it stored in your car, as tempting as that may be with the recurring break-ins in cars. Keep the card rather in a physically safe place in your home. Use the card sparingly, and normally only use it to charge amounts that you can easily pay off in full before with your very next paycheck, before the end of the statement period, all right? So you want to keep the card open. You don't want to close the account for reasons we talked about in the last video about credit scores, right? So you want to keep the card open. You just don't want to use it and max out the balance. On a regular basis, you want to check the balance, the charges you've made, the usage for the previous period during the first week of every month. You want to check it out, make sure that it's accurate, that it really does show the transactions you've made and that there's nothing suspicious going on. And you want to use that credit card as a responsible path to earning more substantial credit when you need it. In other words, the credit card is not a free pass to go wild and buy that outfit you'd wanted for weeks, or a new pair of very expensive shoes, or those kinds of things. No, the credit card is rather a path to earning more substantial credit for when you will need it later in life. Remember we talked about how the credit score that you'll need to have your employment application taken seriously, or the credit score that will open many types of other bank and investment accounts or qualify you to eventually apply for a mortgage loan to purchase a home. That's what the first use of your credit card is really for. And of course, this suggests, if I'm giving you a slide how to use a credit card, I'm going to also give you a slide how not to use a credit card. Don't use it for impulse buying. Don't use it for, as sometimes we affectionately call it, retail therapy. I'm feeling sad. I'm going to buy a new outfit. Okay? Don't use it for purchases that you have not thoughtfully planned for or weighed as objectively as possible. Not emotional, not subjective. You also don't be the type of credit user that doesn't pay the balance off at the end of every month. That doesn't check the activity, usage, and transactions on a regular basis. That doesn't, for goodness sake, that doesn't make a payment every month. Remember, credit history affects your score more than any other factor. You want to make regular payments, even if it's just the minimum. You also want to respect the potential danger of letting credit card debt get out of control. It can be the fastest path to absolute financial ruin, letting consumer revolving credit card debt get out of control. You do realize that there are some financial counseling out there that will tell you that all credit cards are so dangerous you should never ever have a credit card. In this course, we don't take that position. We believe that if you're responsible and approach your financial life soberly and seriously, that the use of revolving lines of credit like credit cards can be a wonderful thing to build your credit history and increase your credit score over time. But we would be remiss if we did not remind you in this video, there is great danger, potential danger, in misusing and mismanaging credit card debt. And therefore, it's something to be used with the utmost seriousness and sobriety and respect for the power and the danger of credit card use. We hope that's helpful. We'll see you in the next video.